Good morning, first hour. Let's hear it for Writers Week. We're here every day so far with you all. Thursday, going through. Hopefully, got to see a lot of you here last night. I heard it was great things at the live podcast that we had here. Sierra DeMoner up here on stage. So hopefully, we got a lot of people there from this class in this hour out there enjoying it. We have a full packed hour today. These are one of my favorite days for us to enjoy because they are your peers up here on stage sharing their writing. This is what it's all about. Okay, so a couple of shout outs before we get started here today. First, if your parents are a Booster member, make sure you go home and give them a nice big hug. Say, I love you, thank you, I appreciate you, because if it wasn't for them, we would not be here right now and doing this. Another shout out to Tech. Let's hear for Tech, right? Nice job. Making this whole week going. Super dedicated, appreciate you. I'm supposed to give a nice shout out to the Broadcasting Club, right? Broadcasting Club. Go check out on YouTube. There's some interviews, some behind the scenes interviews with some of our presenters. They are doing that. They're on top of it. So shout out to the Broadcasting Club, Mr. Heritage. Thank you. Right? And then I think I covered everything. Yeah, so let's just get into it. Let's enjoy some of these presentations. So first up, we have Noman.
Hi everybody. I think this is what it feels like to be tall. Before I start, I want to give a big shout out to my AP Lit class first hour, Mrs. Ames. And just because we're on the shout out mood, I want to give a big shout out to a group that supports me every single day. Please shout out the best AP Bio live group. Well, we're in the mood for shout-outs and fun times. Let's talk about heartbreak. So, the piece that I wrote today is actually pretty funny. It's about a couple that I don't even know, and I'm not really sure if they're a couple. My mom and I were going to a coffee shop, and I saw two strangers sitting on a table. They looked like they were about to break up, and so I wrote a story about them. And you'll see me talking like 2521. It's like kind of inspired from the Korean drama 2521. So. It's called Not in This Life, But Another. And it's from the guy's perspective. I escape the scorching heat of Killer May. Step into our usual coffee shop. The cool breeze of the air conditioning hits my neck. I spot you in our usual corner, eyes wandering. I drag my feet through the semi-empty coffee shop. It's lunchtime, the saddest meal of all day, and late coffee drinks are the saddest of all. Because late coffee drinks mean that you don't have any energy, but you just want to draw the illusion that you are alive. And so, when I'm in front of you at our usual table, I take in a deep breath that chokes me, punctures my spine. You are leaving. I let you speak, and as you do, my mind leaves my skull, packs beach bags, and heads off to the next available taxi. And there we were, feet dipped in the cold beach. Your hand carelessly dancing with the wind, hair whipping back in the wind you bargained for. I want to say I love you, but I don't know how. And that night we walk, we hold hands, and then you gasp, a shooting star. And so I take my finger and I trace the magical dust of the star. We were two souls trying to find home. That night we felt complete. But nothing lasts forever. Everything is momentary. Even the good days tend to flow away. Slowly, your apologies became more genuine than your love, and we suddenly floated away. Our love was gone, disappeared. I thought I lost parts of me that I needed. My mind comes back from that beach, and I stare at you. A place that's never silent or corner died, the quiet surface for a very long time. And you look at me and say, it's a Tuesday, and then you leave and never come back. 2 years later, I go into that coffee shop again, and I look at empty space where your body had rested. And I remember how this time, 2 years ago, we broke up, and I made the hardest decision ever, to walk away still madly in love with you. So I sat in our corner, looked at the empty space, and I started talking to an empty seat. It takes me a while to process information, I say, and I didn't mean to just look at you and nod when you said you were leaving. What I wanted to say is, don't go. I love you. I wasn't ready yet. I still remember that night, the ocean and the falling moonlight. There was you and me, and I thought we would last forever. You and me from the past, 25, 21. We went through so much to be strangers again. Our story didn't end well, but it was still the best I know. Simply because the weather was good and the weather was bad. The weather was good enough for us to survive. We ended, yes, but I'm so glad that the universe allowed your soul to stop by. It might end badly in one life, but the next will be better. And I will always love you, even in the arms of someone else. As I get up to leave, finally saying the proper goodbye I should have said 2 years ago, a chilly breeze goes into the coffee shop. Your scent arrived with the wind. And for a brief moment, we were us again. Us from the past. 25, 21. Two lost souls finally found a home. I look at you, your smile radiating, arm in the hand of someone else. I smile, nod, and I walk past you. And as I open the door, I hear a whisper. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you. Please keep the positive vibes going and welcome Kai.
Hi everyone, my name is Kay and I'm a junior. Shout out to Mrs. Raymond's first period AP Writing class. And fair warning, my piece does go a little hard on the philosophical illusions, so just stay with me. My piece is called Death of the Philosopher. Eliot tells us the world ends with a whimper. Thoreau tells us the world ends with a bang. And Nietzsche tells us the way it ends doesn't even matter because we'll all be gone anyway. So the question remains, how does the world end and how do we reconcile it? There are 3 options. First, the grim struggle. Each man is an island unto himself, painstakingly building up walls of unspokens, maybes, regrets. Those walls crash down, leaving us with gray visages, staring at our souls laid bare, hollow. Not a word is spoken, because there's nothing to say. Nothing to articulate the stark reality of a life wasted in hiding. Thus, the world ends with a whimper. Second, the reckless abandon. Each of us crashing through life as riptides on shores, as ripples upon the strand, destroyed by the conviction that nothing has meaning, so none of our actions truly matter. In this second circle, we, drifters of self-indulgence and unfettered passion, now drift forever in a cyclone, a howling darkness. Apathy, the slippery slope that it is, has brought us to the heart of the inferno. Thus, the world ends with a bang. Now, I don't know about you, but both of those options so far sound disheartening. Either sequester away into nothingness, or combust with the brilliance of a supernova. But there is a third option, one that's a bit more absurd. That's right, this entire piece is an absurdist manifesto, a love letter to my main man, Albert Camus. Our third option lies in accepting the absurd, that sheer impossibility of trying to understand the world and trying to find your own understanding anyway. We are Sisyphus. The rock is our quest for enlightenment, and understand that we will never, ever make it up that hill. But in trying to, we make our own meaning. In trying, we accept the rhythm of the world as a conundrum of esoterica, and instead discover that the beating of my heart and yours is far more profound. When you can look at someone and say, I'm everything I am because of you. Isn't that something? Maybe the stars will never know you by name. And maybe nature is a language we aren't privy to read. But understand that just the fact that I'm here and you're here is enough. One must imagine us and Sisyphus happy. Thus, the world ends with us. Thank you. Next up is Fiona.
Hi, my name is Fiona Donahue. I want to give a shout out to Mr. Anderson's first period I don't have the title for this. Okay. I'm 9 years old. It's a warm March afternoon. I wear my favorite shorts and t-shirt. I sit on the curb of the playground with my best friend, and she tells me my legs are hairy and that I should shave. No boys will like you with that hair, she says. I hate being a woman. I'm 10 years old. My best friend gets her period, and she seems so grown up. She asked me if I've gotten mine, and I lied, saying yes, it's so exciting. Wanting to fit in, but dreading the time when it finally comes. I hate being a woman. I'm 12 years old. I get my first period. It ruins the day I planned for ice skating. I think it is gross, and I'm scared, but when I tell my mother, she congratulates me. It doesn't feel worth celebrating. I hate being a woman. I'm 13 years old. I wear my sparkly Justice tank top to school. I feel fabulous and pretty, but when I walk to class, I get stopped by my soccer coach. He tells me that what I'm wearing is inappropriate and sends me to the locker room to change, looking at me in disgust. He must forget that he is the same man who offered for me to change into my uniform in his class after school. I hate being a woman. I am 14 years old. I have noticed my chest is getting bigger. I'm uncomfortable with the change after noticing the attention it gets. The boys at school, men on the street, and even some of my teachers drift their gazes to me like hungry animals. I start wearing baggy clothes. I feel the need to hide my femininity. I hate being a woman. I'm 15 years old. My guy friends treat me differently. Most men treat me differently. Even my partner in dance senses the shift. While rehearsal is strictly practice to me, he takes it as a chance to run his hands over my body, profounding my leotard. That isn't a part of our combination. I hate being a woman. I'm 16 years old. I watch TikToks about protecting myself. I learned to carry my keys between my knuckles. I have mace clipped to my wallet, and I can keep my ankles from getting too close to the car when getting in. I am always on alert. I hate being a woman. I'm 17 years old. I know how to protect myself. I'm starting to become comfortable in my skin. I've learned that being a woman means having strength. It means I am proud of my femininity. I wear bows in my hair, talk about makeup, avidly listen to Taylor Swift, and love feeling pretty. I know that my womanhood is a gift, something to cherish for as long as I live. While it's not easy living in a world built upon values that target women, I understand that I am more than what the world defines me to be. I love being a woman. Thank you. Please welcome Jack.
Hey guys, so first off, shout out to Mr. Anderson's first period class. So I'm here today because I'd love to be able to say that I have presented in Writers Week in the past, but as you know, I'm extremely introverted. So I'd rather skip to being able to refer to this in the past tense. However, a friend of mine once said that making speeches helps overcome your fear of doing so. In fact, last year, that friend, Glenn, did something similar. He gave a speech on not being afraid of giving speeches. So what better time is there to do so than right here, right now? After today, I won't be afraid ever. Anyways, so let's talk about environmentalism because I'm also here to share my interest in that topic. So before humans showed up, the amount of photosynthesizing life and the amount of respirating life tend to stabilize. In the annual cycle, photosynthesis decreases carbon dioxide concentration, with parts per million increasing in the winter. Thus, in pre-industrial conditions, the rate of photosynthesis is also the rate of cellular respiration. However, people have disturbed this delicate balance by systematically combusting fixed carbon for the last 2 centuries. First through burning wood, then mining underground coal deposits, and later drilling for petroleum. This carbon has been combusted to generate heat, produce electricity, and otherwise provide the means for the conveniences of modern life. At the same time, people have leveled forests for agriculture and grazing areas, drastically reducing the amount of photosynthetic biomass. These processes have resulted in a drastic increase in the concentration of inorganic carbon through carbon dioxide gas, as the system cannot reach equilibrium. The summer concentration reduction no longer reaches the fire season. So this imbalance has influenced another problem, like carbonates in the ocean floor and carbon dioxide salt in the water feed into each other as well. So this pairing automatically reduces the acuteness of the atmospheric imbalance due to diffusion through the ocean, but it would still lead to a higher atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide, because carbon from millions of years ago has been reintroduced into the environment. So, furthermore, carbon dioxide buildup could increase ocean acidity and salinity, specifically acidity. So, an increase in concentration to about 500 parts per million would decrease the pH by about 0.2. This would negatively affect marine life because carbonate is something that coral relies on to grow. So decreases in that would significantly decrease coral reef sizes, and that's already been seen. So without or with our help, conditions will stabilize. Although this would eventually happen automatically, it would take far too much time for animals that have evolved for certain conditions. While past effects are not reversible, present actions can prevent further damage. This means that society needs to phase out its reliance on fixed carbon as soon as possible. Next up is Malvika.
Hi everyone, my name is Malvika. A quick shout out to Braverman's AP Lang class. The piece I wrote today is one about my great-grandmother based off of an assignment we had in our English class. And while the story is nothing out of the ordinary, there are a lot of important lessons I've taken from her life. My great-grandmother's name was Kumudini Chungi. In Marathi, this name means white lotus. What makes the white lotus stand out from any other lotus is that it emerges from water without any mud or debris hiding its beauty. It symbolizes mental purity and spiritual perfection in the face of life's challenges. In the time period and family she grew up in, along with the life she led after, my great-grandmother perfectly captured the spirit of the white lotus. My Bunji, the word for great-grandmother in Marathi, grew up in 1920s India in Pune, a city in the state of Maharashtra. In the midst of utter rebellion through India's independence movement, the city was the center of political unrest against the British rule, which in turn only brought more chaos. Still, life went on. My Bunji had one sister, and while their mother was pregnant with my Bunji, their father passed away, leaving the mother to raise the daughters on her own. Years went by, and her sister married into a well-standing family in the state of Hyderabad, which at the time was an independent monarchy under strict control, very different from the city my great-grandmother grew up in. After just a few years of my great-grandmother's sister's marriage, tragedy struck. In 1942, her sister passed away after contracting typhoid fever, leaving behind a 3-month-old son. The disease was terribly common in 1940s India, and the loss was devastating. But in the aftermath of these events, my great-grandmother knew she couldn't have her sister's young, innocent child live without the closest thing to her mother. So she chose to marry her brother-in-law, Shamrao, when she was just 20 years old. She chose to become the mother of a child that wasn't her own. Shamrao worked as a judge, and the nature of his job required him in several different cities, preventing him from being home much of the time. With this, my great-grandmother assumed the head of the household. She was extremely efficient in managing a large home with all the staff and raising 5 children, the firstborn being my own grandmother. My Punji gave her children a wonderful childhood. She prioritized their education, treated them all as equals, divided the treasured family possessions equally, planted fruit trees in the back of their house to harvest fresh fruit as a part of their diet, and taught her kids how to milk their cow that just lived in the back of their house by walking it into the kitchen. When they came home from school every day, my mom and her siblings would walk to her house. As their grandmother, she would tell them wonderful mythological stories or stories of her visits to the United States, which my mom still remembers the details of to this day. The course of my great-grandmother's life followed that of a white lotus. Despite loss and struggle, her diligence didn't just keep her going, but she became a force to be reckoned with. She was a creature of habit who read voraciously and was keenly interested in the world around her. Her discipline and methodology defined her in many ways, with a daily routine of lunch at 11, tea at 4, and dinner at 7:30 that never wavered. She was always independent and punctual, never relied on others, and worked to keep herself knowledgeable. These were only some of the characteristics that gave her the makings of the CEO of a company or a senator. But the 1940s was a time where women weren't expected nor encouraged to work. The classic case of right place, wrong time. In a later time, thousands of people could have had the opportunity to be blessed by her knowledge and leadership. But despite the timing, her character and resilience aren't forgotten. They are remembered through a lasting impact on her children, grandchildren, and now great-grandchildren. My great-grandmother passed away in 2002. The opportunity to not only meet but know her is one I'll never forget, but I feel lucky to understand the role she played as the backbone of the family. I see her spirit shine through my grandmother as she tirelessly manages the house in India, and through my mom working both at her job and in our house. With this, I thank not only my great-grandmother today, but my parents, brother, grandparents, and any person who works tirelessly to achieve their own goals, works indefinitely to support the people they care about, and works to embody the White Lotus. It's these people who make our world a better place. Thank you. Next up, please give a hand for Emily.
My name is Emily. I'm a freshman from Miss Gerber's class over there. I'd like to shout out my LD debate captain, Stephen Thomas, because he promised us donuts on Tuesday's meeting. Okay, so I was reading a webtoon. I know I'm exposing myself on stage, but it was basically about jealousy between 2 women who are competitors in the same field, yet they are oddly similar in a way that they don't even notice. So my piece is about how jealousy corrupts people's relationships. It's called Dust and Throne, and I'll start yapping now. Mary and I grew up as classmates. We were friends not because we got along, but because we did the same things like clockwork. Math, science, violin, swimming, the list goes on. I'd never seen Mary taste anything short of success. Is that why she's like a flash of gossamer sunbeams, blazing eyes more brilliant than Polaris in the night, like her last name is Sue? Today, 12 years later, she still shines bitterly bright. Even the winter wind on the shore dares not touch her, lest it interrupt her wide-eyed stare at the old lighthouse. The same wind blows in my eyes. Yet I try my hardest to follow her gaze to the suited brick night, guiding the straggling townships to a small pond where they can be big fish once again. Through my whipping hair, I spy the dead lantern at the top. I still locked in the lighthouse. Mary tells me that its paint is peeling, that it decorates the wind with yellow chrysanthemums. I respond by saying it'll get repainted. And it will. Come summer, when the air is balmy and it's tempting to pretend once more that the entire world is warm, it'll get dressed in a coat of white to tell the sea that standing, that shining, is easy. For the lighthouse and its kin, things like that always come effortlessly. Finally, her hollow stare swivels away from the lighthouse and to me. I don't think it will, she says as she sits down on the sand, though it's more gravel than anything else. Still, she doesn't flinch as it digs into her exposed skin, nor when it drags against her legs as she pulls her knees up to her chest. I sit too. It's not comfortable, but I respond by wedging myself more firmly into the ground. The sky is the color of faded laundry. Its clouds hesitate before trying to soothe the sea's rage. Mary had once fled here after getting an 89% on some math quiz. I'd seen her eyes, usually bluer than the sky, gloss over briefly when she received the packet, but it was only after school that she had left herself and her tears run. Something with a silhouette of pity, but the taste of something else had shaped itself in my heart. From then on, she never scored less than an A, and I never got the pleasure of reveling in that feeling again. So today, as if I'm a moth to a flame, the red in her weary eyes draws me in. The twisted hope in my throat warps my question into something painfully useless. Why? Mary's voice is a threadbare sheet as she speaks over the waves. The lightkeeper died. Got washed away by the tide. Her fingernails darken with dirt as she paws the sand, but she continues, her words dragging on the ground. His son doesn't want to take over either. The building is as good as dead. But when I return my attention to the lighthouse, it doesn't look dead at all. Alabaster king bearing the steel sheet of sky and clouds on his shoulders, it seems right at home with the briny, wine-dark sea that dashes itself at the dark rocks below. Won't someone else come and man it eventually, I ask, even if the salary's bad? The sea breeze hits Mary with tiny droplets of water that sink into her skin and stain her with the stench of salt. No, they'll build up something newer and brighter than tear this one down because it's so old. She pauses to bring her hands, pale as withered poplars, to brush the star-like sand out of her hair. Then she adds, no one needs 2 lighthouses in one small pond. Taking it down, that's too much work, I say as a dry laugh ricochets between my teeth. It'll be fine. I sit back and stretch my legs out, admiring the canvas of indents left by the loose rocks. A blue vein sticks out boldly amidst the scattering of red. It doesn't sound like you want that, she hums. I thought you'd prefer something new. I know you hate that thing. In a short ensuing silence, a seagull cries out. With eyes first narrowed, then closed, Mary tilts her head back to watch it dip from the sky to catch the sea foam before it returns to the clouds. Then her face drops into the cradle of her palms. Mary, it doesn't matter what I prefer, I sigh. It'll get repainted. As it always has been, the accursed thing will get its scarred brick glossed over and rusty catwalk renewed. It'll reflect gold at each daybreak until its new set of armor is also washed away by high tide, leaving the raw insides open for salt to sink into. My name is Marianne. Why have you never called me that? She peers up at me, that rare shininess returning to her cloudy eyes. She's got the same rabid, visceral something that she had let me see back when she failed at perfection for the very first time. She spreads her arms towards me, or perhaps towards the whole world, as if waiting for an embrace. But I blink, scrub her frail skin, and scour her flat eyes, drawing out more red with my sandpaper hunger for the sorrow of someone who has nothing to mourn. I could never pity Marianne, not truly and wholeheartedly. The closest I ever felt to sympathy for her was disgust for the way her words settled like ash in my heart. Pity only manifested its ugly form to me when I pitied myself for being sentenced to thirst rather than to drowning. Even now, as she trembles before me like a rabbit faced with a wolf, I feel a horrible sense of relief. But if I were the sun and not the thieving moon, perhaps I could have felt her warmth rather than just her light. Instead, I watch each finger of hers tremble in the sea salt breeze before I stand to walk away, leaving Marianne to remain riveted here forever. With anguish, she cries out, "Your hands are empty. Is that why they weigh heavy with sin?" That's it. Next up is Nitya.
Hi, this is really exciting. Okay. I'm going to be reading a piece from the same English assignment that Malvika previously talked about. So, third time's a charm. Shout out to Mrs. Ray Ribbon's class. My grandfather is an inspiration of what it means to follow your passions, regardless of the expectations that others have for you. He grew up living in a joint family in India, which was quite a common lifestyle in his adolescent years. In other words, his household consisted of an extended family, typically including 3 or more generations and their spouses, living together in a single household. And he loved it. There was always something to do and someone to do it with. He loved looking forward to eating his favorite traditional Indian meals every Sunday, with each family member around their one lengthy dining table, the same table that has been sitting in the same spot of the kitchen for generations. He loved gathering around the couch with his 5 brothers, parents, cousins, aunts, and uncles to watch the weekly cricket game, racing to the couch to save himself a seat. He loved walking to school every day with his cousins and brothers, laughing about a prank they pulled on their grandparents. He loved playing rummy, a card game, but more than playing, he loved scheming a strategy that would guarantee his success in every round. And most of all, he loved learning. Knowledge is power, he would tell me every time I visited India. People can take away your possessions, but they can never take away your knowledge. No knowledge is ever wasted. My grandfather was introduced to the normal Indian stereotypes regarding respectable professions at an early age. His dad, my great-grandfather, was a respected businessman. In hopes of following his father's footsteps, like many sons in India aspire to do, he attended a prestigious college and earned his degree in engineering and his MBA afterwards in further education. His knowledge in both fields were unmatched by any of his colleagues. His father expected him to follow in his footsteps of running the family business, but my grandpa quickly learned that it wasn't his passion. He couldn't help people in the way he hoped his career would lead him to do. He wanted to pursue his dream of working in finance and banking to help people overcome financial hardships, one day at a time. At this time, banking in India was still a new, emerging profession, and it wasn't seen in as high of a regard as business or engineering work. Many family members disapproved of my grandfather's career change, saying he didn't have the education to succeed in banking and he would immediately fall behind. But boy, did he prove them wrong. My grandfather learned from those in the banking industry who succeeded before him. He wasn't afraid to ask for help, ask questions, and learn more than he ever needed to know to be successful in this field. He learned more about his passions, not just because he loved to learn, but not just because he needed to learn, he loved it. My grandfather taught me the importance of learning about my passions, because to him, that was what success meant. It didn't matter if you made a fortune through your profession, if you didn't love what you did every day. I learned that developing intellectual vitality and having my own unique desire to learn is a stepping stone to my future success and happiness, in whatever life I choose for myself. Thank you. Next up, we have Ishan.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ishan. Before I start, I want to give Mr. Anderson's first period a big third shout out of the day. So, what I'm talking about today is not something a lot of people would ideally expect me to talk about. Traditionally, it's politics for me, but what I'm talking about today is something I feel is worth sharing, and it's something that has shaped a big part of who I've become in the last year. So with that, I give a content warning to people about grief and death, if that is something that pertains to you. But yes, I'll get started. I remember last February sitting in my room at 3 a.m., staring at nothing in the dark, just listening to the clock ticking. Every second that went by got longer. Every breath felt heavier than the last. I was lost. But that's what grief does. There's no actual explanation for any of it. I recalled my friends telling me just weeks ago when it happened the first time that time heals everything. I questioned that. It wasn't the first time I'd experienced it that year, and it wasn't going to be the last. When the news hits you, it hits hard. Grief is not something that comes with a playbook. As much as we may need one, there's no step-by-step guide to navigate everything that comes with it. I wish I had one. I wish someone was there to tell me exactly what to do, exactly the right way to do things, and how to deal with it all. And God, I wish I had one. But as I continued to face it, I learned that it was my path to make. And while back then I was a little naive and I thought that it was incumbent on me to prove to the world that I was okay, to prove that that nothing was wrong, every time I wasn't able to do that, I felt weaker and I felt more defeated. It's important to recognize that grief is not a battle that's meant to be won or lost. It's a journey that is meant to be embraced. Resilience became my ally in this journey. It's the strength that helped me fight through the toughest and lowest points. And the pain probably will never completely dissipate, but the simple motivation back then to wake up and eat and talk transformed into a valuable force that shaped who I am and taught me to value life. As a junior in high school initially, and then later a senior on the precipice of planning my future, it did take a toll on who I was and the responsibilities I felt that I owed to various people in my life. I showed up to school, I showed up to practices, I was a little tense for sure, but most of all, I just stayed quiet. I didn't want to seem weak. I didn't want people to think any less of me. I just felt that people wouldn't understand what was going on because I've been taught consistently that grief is meant to be an individual journey, that it's unique and special for every person. Now I know this isn't a message that has to resonate with everyone, but at least one person in this audience knows what I'm talking about. And maybe there's even somebody going through it right now. And to you, I say, you're not alone. When I learned this at first, it was when I turned to my closest friends. They counseled me, they cared for me through each bout of grief I faced last year. Some of them are in this auditorium right now. Some of them are around me. But as I was rocked further and further by each loss, I discovered something even more, the power of community. After a while, I began connecting with others who shared similar experiences. Whether it was my aunt, who I rarely spoke to, who suddenly became one of my closest confidants, or one of my best friends, who was the only one that ever understood what I was going through at one point. Or even the random stranger, who hugged me for 5 whole minutes, not letting go at one of the lowest points of my life. I learned that grief is not meant to be faced alone. It's life's most adverse challenge that can be fought with the support of others. As I began to learn that slow ticking clock suddenly started to tick faster and faster. Now the remnants of grief stay with you. That's something else I learned. And they will stay with me, I know. For example, now I get more anxious easily. I've become a lot more cautious about basic things. My mind is quick to jump to conclusions when somebody says, I have news. But along with that, I've become more empathetic and understanding. Overall, I feel that it's made me a stronger person. But the thing about this experience is that everyone makes their own decisions. Everyone figures things out differently. So if you feel like you're alone, or if you feel like you're weak coming out and sharing, I tell you right now, don't hide and don't be ashamed. It takes an initial amount of courage, and that may feel like the weight of the world, but once you do it, it becomes liberating. Now, about a year after everything began for me, I've learned a few things that I want to share. Everyone's journey in grief is significant and unique. If you know someone battling grief, extend your compassion. If you're struggling, never hesitate to ask for support. I promise it will end eventually. You're going to come out stronger. It gave me the strength, the resilience that I learned to battle every moment of every grief bout that I had. It gives me the courage to stand on this stage and tell the world that it's okay. But it's the most important thing is to build a community of people who you trust, people who you can cry with, people who you can lean on at your lowest, and who can carry you through the toughest. And most importantly, never give up. In doing all of these, we forge a path toward healing, resilience, and a deeper appreciation for the fragility of life. Thank you.
Let's hear it one more time for all our presenters today. Okay, we got a couple minutes, and so I figure I have one question I'm gonna ask the presenters here, and if it goes quickly, then I might open it up to the audience here. But, one question I have for everybody here, you can think about this. Why Writers Week? Why did you choose to present and to share your thoughts, your ideas here on this day, on this stage? Who wants to go? Yeah, we'll start.
So I spoke here last year as well, and it was something that a lot of people resonated with. And I remember also last year being on stage listening to somebody who had something similar to what I was talking about. And I saw how much it resonated with people. And back then, I was at a low point, but as I continued to experience more life and I continued to learn more and more about the different aspects of what I was just discussing, I realized that this was a good platform to share. I mean, 500 people in an audience, I felt somebody might get the message that I wanted to get. So that's what I thought.
I kind of just did it because it was my senior year, and like, I don't know, I had nothing to lose, and we did like a project in English, and someone was like, oh, like you should do Writers Week, and so I did, and that was about it. I don't know. That's all.
I kind of talked about this in the intro, but yeah, senior year, last chance, and also want to get over fear of public speaking.
Personally, I just really enjoy speaking in front of people, and I've like seen presenters speak at Writers Week before. It's a safe space, it's a good platform, and I just wanted to try like, telling a story and providing a message through that story, so I thought it would be a fun opportunity.
Mine is similar to hers because I'm just a big talker in general, and I wanted to share what I learned from my grandpa because I think learning from people around you is one of the best ways to grow.
With me, I never really thought of myself as a creative writer before I got to high school. Like, I always thought of myself as more of like a reader and an analyzer, less so like creating my own thoughts. But then I had a lot of teachers that were like, no, like your ideas are original, they're valid. And then so I kind of just started writing, and I wrote something that I really liked, and I was like, you know, maybe people should hear it. And that's why I decided to do Writers Week.
When I moved here from Conant during my sophomore year, I asked Mrs. Syed what all the pictures on the wall represented, and they were all for the authors that came here to Writers Week. And I really wanted to stand on the same stage that many honored authors stood on: Gwendolyn Brooks, Gerald Mulder. So yeah, I think I just wanted to give myself that pride that I stood on the same stage that those great authors stood on.
Well, my English teacher brought it up, and we were doing like a creative writing unit at the time, so I figured it would really be trouble for me to submit something, even though it ended up not being what I read out loud on stage day. So yeah, it was mostly because of my English teacher.
All right, and I think that wraps us up for today. You were an awesome audience. We have one more day. Bring the energy again. Thank you. Come back.